Hello everyone. Good morning to all of you. Welcome to Viti Patshala. How are you all? So this is our 55th class of the history we were doing, and we are in the last session or the last part of the history, and we are doing the 11th and the 12th history. So this would be our 19th chapter, the last chapter of the 11th class, volume 2nd. So this is about the towards the modernity. It talks about the modernity. Now what we are going to learn is in this chapter is about the socio-religious reforms initiated by the Brahmo Samaj, the Pratna Samaj, Arya Samaj, Ramakrishna Mission, and the teachings of the Swami Vivekanand, Theosophical Society, Satya Sodak Samaj, Sri Narayan Guru Dharm Paripalan Yogam, Islam reform movements and the reform movements in the Tamil Nadu that we were not going to do. One part that we would be going to leave is this part. And at last we would be talking about the contribution of the Christian missionaries in the India. So let's start. So introduction. Now, by the first quarter of the 19th century, India has produced a small English educated intelligentsia closely associated with the British administration or the British trade. Now, the idea and the work of the Christian missionaries had already begun to have its impact. Bengal was the first province to be affected by the British influence, and so it was here that the several ideas of the reform originated. British administration, English education, European literature brought to India a new wave of the thoughts that challenged the traditional knowledge. Rationalism as the basis for ethical thinking, the idea of the human progress and evolution, the concept of natural rights associated with the Enlightenment were the new ideas which led to what has been termed as Indian Renaissance. The spread of the printing technology played a crucial role in the diffusion of the ideas. Now, in this light, we would be going to study the first topic, that is the emergence of the reform movements in the India. So, the British characterized the Indian society in the 19th century as being caught in the vicious circle of superstitions and obscurantism. In their view, idolatry and the polytheism reinforced the orthodoxy, impelling the people to follow them blindly. The social conditions were equally depressing, and the condition of the woman was deplorable. The practice of the sati came in for particular condemnation. The division of the society according to birth resulting in the caste system and was also criticized. Most importantly, the British argued that without the intervention there was no possibility of deliverance from these evils for Indians. Needless to say, this was a self-serving argument articulated by missionaries and utilitarians to justify the British rule. Now, what do you mean by utilitarians? Now, their belief is in the doctrine of the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Some of the scholars of this school, that is the utilitarian, are your Bentham, John Stuart Mill, So these are your utilitarians. Other than that, if I talk to you about the utilitarians, the Hobbes, the John Locke, these are the social contract thinkers. So these are the utilitarians. And if I talk to about you to the Mill, he used to work for the British East India Company. India was a much bigger, more complex, and diverse country in the early 19th century. Now, conditions varied vastly across it. The social and the cultural evils had been fought by the Indian reformers through the ages. But the advent of the British with their Enlightenment ideas undoubtedly posed a challenge. This chapter looks at how social reform movements emerged in the various parts of the country. The development of the Western culture and the ideology forced the traditional institutions to revitalize themselves. During the second half of the 19th century, the expression of the protest and the desire for the change were articulated through various reform movements. These movements aimed at reforming and democratizing the social institutions and religious outlook of the Indian people. The emergence of the new economic forces, spread of education, growth of the nationalist sentiment, influence of the modern Western thoughts, ideas, and the culture, and awareness of the changes taking place in Europe strengthened the resolve to reform. Now, what gave these reform movements an ideological unity were the rationalism, religious universalism, and humanism. This perspective enabled them to adopt a rational approach to the tradition and evaluate the contemporary socio religious practices for the standpoint of the social utility. Now, for example, Raja Ram Mohan Roy repudiated the infallibility of the Vedas, and during the Aligarh movement, Sayyid Ahmad Khan emphasized that the religious tenets were not immutable. As Keshav Chandra Sen said, that our position is not that truths are to be in all religions, but that all established religions of the world are true. Now, these movements enveloping the entire cultural stream of the Indian society brought about the significant practices in the realm of the language, religion, art, and philosophy. The reform movements can be categorized basically in the two categories. The first, we would be going to study the reform movement. Second, the revivist movement, which would be reviving the different things which were there in the older days. Now, both the movements depend in the varying degree of an appeal to the lost purity of the religion. The primary difference between them lay in the degree to which they relied on the tradition or on the reason and the conscience. The social reform movement formed an integral part of the religious reform primarily because all the efforts toward the social ill, like the caste and the gender based inequality, derived the legitimacy from the religion. So all the social ills which were in the society, they derive the legitimacy from the religion. That's why it was important. Initially, the social reform movement had a narrow social base. They were limited to the upper and the middle strata of the society and tried to adjust their modernized views to the existing social reality. From then on, the social reform movements began to percolate to the lower strata of the society to reconstruct the social fabric. Heated debates among the intellectuals expressed in the form of the public arguments, tracts, and the journals. It played a big role in taking new ideas to large sections of the people, as well as reformulate older ideas in a new form. At the start, the organizations such as the Social Conference, Servants of the India, Christian missionaries were instrumental in giving an impetus to the social reform movements, along with many enlightened individuals about whom we dwell on in the following pages. In the later years, especially by the 20th century, the national movement provided the leadership and the organization for the social reforms. So this was a big introduction to the things which we are going to study. Now these things we have done earlier also. So once we have done from the 6th to the 8th class, and once I have taken earlier when I was taking the pre classes, and now this is the third time we would be going to do the socio religious movement. So I hope these would be clear after this. Now, Brahmo Samaj. The first and the important comes is the Brahmo Samaj 1828. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a man of the versatile genius. He established the Brahmo Samaj in August 1828. The Brahmo Samaj was committed to the worship of the adoration being who is the author and the preserver of the universe. His long term agenda was to purify the Hinduism and to preach the monotheism for which he drew the authority from the Vedas. He emphasized human dignity, opposed idolatry and social evils such as the sati. A retired servant of the East India Company, he was the conversant in the many languages, including the Persian and the Sanskrit. His ideas and the activities were aimed at the political upliftment of the society through the social reform. He was a determined crusader against the inhuman practice of the sati. His tract written in the 1818, a conference between an advocate for and an opponent of the practice of the burning widows, cited the sacred text to prove that no religion sanctioned the burning alive of the widows. His efforts fructified, and the company, through an enactment of the law 1829, declared the practice of sati a crime. The overall contribution of the Brahmo Samaj can be summed up as follow. So these are the few points, the summary of the Brahmo Samaj. Now the first is that it denounced the polytheism, ideal worship, and faith in the divine avatars or the incarnation. So these were denounced. It condemned the caste system, dogmas, and the superstitions. It wanted the abolition of the child marriage parda system and the practice of the sati. It supported the widow remarriage. Inspired by the ideals of the French Revolution, Ram Mohan Roy left for the Europe and died in the Bristol. After his death, there was a steady decline, but for the new lease life given to it by the Debendranath Tagore. Debendranath Tagore, who was the father of the Ravindranath Tagore. So at the later stage that the Brahmo Samaj would be come into the hand of the देवेंद्रनाथ टैगोर. सो बाद में ये जो है किसके हाथ में आ गया, देवेंद्रनाथ टैगोर में. इनिशियली राजा राम मोहन रॉय ने स्टार्ट किया था. उसके चार ऑब्जेक्टिव्स थे. ठीक है, बेसिकली ऑब्जेक्टिव ये था कि सोसाइटी में हमें रिफॉर्म लाना है, the practices that are going, and he was most struck down by the sati practice, and for that he launched this Brahmo Samaj and the unification of the society. So after him, the organization was taken forward by the Keshav Chandra Sen. So Debendranath Tagore, then the Keshav Chandra Sen in the 1857. The strength of the organization is known from the number of the branches it had in the 1865. So the 54 Samaj, the 50 in the Bengal, 2 in the Northwest Province, and 1 each in the Punjab and the Madras. In course of the time, Brahmo Samaj broke into the two, namely the Debendranath Tagore Brahmo Samaj of the India and the Keshav Chandra Sen's the Sadharan Brahmo Samaj. So remember this point. See, so one was of the Debendranath Tagore, the Brahmo Samaj of the India, and the other was the Keshav Chandra Sen's the Sadharan Brahmo Samaj. In Tamil Nadu, the Kashi Vishwanath Mudaliar was an adherent of the Samaj. He wrote a play titled the Brahmo Samaj Natakam to expound the ideas of the Samaj. He also wrote a tract in the support of the widow remarriage. In 1864, a Tamil journal titled Tathuv Bodhini was started for the cause of the Brahmo Samaj. The Brahmo Samaj met with the great opposition from the orthodox elements in the Bengal society, such as the Hindu Dharma Sabha. Now, at that time, the education that the Raja Ram Mohan Roy has got, that has changed the views of the Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and he was what he saw in the society that made him changed, and that made him to come with the reform, come to the reform movements in the society, come with the reform movements in the society. Now, however, there were the also reformers such as the Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, who advocated the same ideas but drew the Hindu scriptures as the authority. So sticking to the Hindu scriptures and reforming the religion was the objective of the Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar. His contribution is also immense to the society of that time. Even though the Brahmo Samaj did not win many adherents, it had a big impact on the intellectuals. In the early stages, the many young men seized of the radical ideas, avidly propagated them. Tagore's family was a Brahmo family, and its influence can be seen in his writing and the ideas. The Pratna Samaj, 1867. An offshoot of the Brahmo Samaj, the Pratna Samaj was founded in 1867 in the Bombay by the Atma Ram Pandurang. So remember this name, Atma Ram Pandurang, 1823 to 98. The Pratna Samaj as an organization never had any great influence, but its members like the M.G. Ranade, R.G. Bhandarkar, K.T. Telang were among the great leaders of the 19th century Maharashtra, and they became the founders of the social reform movement in the later year. Pratna Samaj was similar to the Brahmo Samaj, but it was consciously linked to the Bhakti tradition of the Maharashtrian saints. So Bhakti we have left, Bhakti movement we study in the medieval history. The Pratna Samaj continued its work mainly through the educational works directed at the women and the workers at the lower level. It concentrated on the social reforms like interdining, intermarriage, remarriage of the widows, and upliftment of the women and the depressed classes. The National Social Conference, organized at the initiative of the M.G. Ranade, met each year immediately after the Indian National Congress annual session of the 1885. Justice Ranade was an erudite scholar with a keen intellect, and under his able guidance, the Pratna Samaj became the active center. So one of the major advocate was the Justice Ranade. So remember his name. Now he was one of the founders of the Widow Marriage Association and was ardent promoter of the famous Deccan Education Society. Its object was to impart such education to the young as would fit them for the unselfish service of the country. When Ranade died in 1901, his leadership was taken over by the Chandwarkar. Now this was about the Pratna Samaj. Next comes is the Arya Samaj 1875. So there are individual videos available on everyone, so which I have dealt, and those they are directly taken from the old Tamil Nadu SCRT. So you can refer those also for the more in the going into the details. Now the founder of the Arya Samaj was the Dayanand Saraswati 1824 to 1883. Dayanand, a Gujarati, left home in his youth to become an ascetic. For 17 years he wandered around the India. In 1863 he became a wandering preacher, and 5 years later he added the establishment of the schools to his activities. In 1872 he met the Brahmos in the Calcutta. In 1875 he founded the Arya Samaj and the published his major work, that is the Satyarth Prakash. In his view, contemporary Hinduism had become the degenerate, therefore he rejected the Purans, polytheism, idolatry, the role of the Brahmin priest, pilgrimages, many rituals, and the prohibition on the widow marriage. As a good scholar, Sanskrit scholar, he made a call that is going back to the Vedas, that is the early Vedas. He wanted to shape the society on the basis of the Vedas. He disregarded the Purans. Like the other social reformer, he encouraged the female education and remarriage of the widows. Swami Dayanand's sphere of the influence was largely in the Punjab region, where the trading communities of the Khatris experienced the great mobility in the colonial times. However, in the Punjab region, there was much communal conflict among the Hindus, Muslims, and the Sikhs. Dayanand's Suddhi, that is the purification movement, that is the conversion of the non-Hindu to the Hindus, was controversial and provoked the controversy, especially with the Ahmadiyya movement. Arya Samaj is considered to be a revivist movement. Dayanand influence continued into the 20th century through the establishment of the DAV schools, that is the Dayanand Anglo Vedic School, and the colleges. So this was a small topic that you have to remember. Only thing, when the Arya Samaj was founded, what was its philosophy, and there are the two major philosophies, and Dayanand Anglo Vedic colleges, you and the schools and the colleges, that is the thing that you have to remember. Don't go into the much detail. Now next comes is the Ramakrishna Mission, the 1897. As we show above, the early reform movements in the Bengal were the radical questioning and the criticizing the tradition very strongly. In response to this emerged the Ramakrishna Mission as an important religious movement. Ramakrishna Paramhans, a poor priest in a temple at the Dakshineshwar near the Calcutta, had no formal education but led an intense spiritual life. He had a deep faith in the inherent truth of the all religions and tested its beliefs by performing religious service in the accordance with the practice of the different religions. So a good background has been given in the Tamil Nadu old NCRT. You have to refer that also. Old भी आपको पढ़नी पड़ेगी, because there they have given the background and the things are explained in much easier way. Now, according to him, all the religious views are but different ways to lead to the same goal. In a backlash, the later generation of the Western educated intellectuals were drawn to Ramakrishna's broad view, mysticism, and the spiritual fervor. He expounded his views in the short stories and admirable parables, which were compiled by an admirer as the Ramakrishna's Katha Mrit, the Gospel of the Sri Ramakrishna. So something you came to know in this book. कुछ चीजें आपको इस किताब में पता चलती हैं, और कुछ some you came to know from the previous one, old one. And I hope both of them are important for the Tamil Nadu PSC exam. So you have to study both old and the new for your exam. The most famous among his disciples was the young graduate of the Calcutta University named the Narendranath Datta, afterwards famously called as the Swami Vivekanand, emphasizing the practical work over the philosophizing. He established the modern institution of the Ramakrishna mission. So you will find the Ramakrishna mission all over the India. There is a place also, RK Ashram Marg, or the Ramakrishna Ashram Marg in Delhi also. Now he carried the Ramakrishna message all over the India and the world. His learning, eloquence, spiritual fervor, and the personality gathered around him a band of the follower across the country, many of whom also joined the national movement. He attended in the 1893 the famous Parliament of the Religions at the Chicago and made a deep impact on those congregated there. The mission opened the schools, dispensaries, and of orphanages, and they helped the people during their time of the distress caused by the calamities. I am not going too fast, na? Is the things understandable to all of you, na? Tell me if I am going with too speed, so you can tell me at this time only. So Swami Vivekananda was a personification of the youth and the boldness and referred to as the morning star of the modern India. In the words of the Valentine Carol, the first Hindu whose personality won the demonstrative recognition abroad for the India's ancient civilization and for her newborn claims to the nationhood. So they have not talked about the Ramakrishn's the Parliament of the Religion in the detail. So they have not talked about the Parliament of the Religion in the detail. You will find in the old book about that. Okay, Raja. Now next we are going to study about the Theosophical Society. So they have given a short passage on the Theosophical Society. Now this chapter they have organized in a good way. So rather than the other chapters, I will this chapter they have written very well, but the some things are missing. So for example, about the details of the his when he went to the uh, Chicago for the religious conference. The details are not mentioned. His speech has not been mentioned. Now, Theosophical Society, even so, you have to refer other books apart from this. तो आपको दूसरी किताबें भी रेफर करनी पड़ेंगी. Now, Theosophical Society 1886, even as the Indian intellectuals felt challenged by the Western Enlightenment and the rationalistic movements, there was a strain of the thinking in the West which looked to the East for the spiritual salvation. Now, from the idea emerged the Theosophical Society founded by the Madam H.P. Blavatsky and the Colonel H.S. Olcott. So these two names are very important in the United States of the America of the 1875. They come to India in the 1879 and they established their headquarters at the Adyar in the 1886. Under the leadership of the Annie Besant, who came to the India in 1893. The Theosophical Society strength and won many adherents. The Theosophical Society started associations across South India. Though involved in the many controversies, the society played an important role in the revival of the Buddhism in the India. Ayodhya, the Panditar, the radical Dalit thinker, was introduced to the modern Buddhism through his interaction with the Colonel Olcott, who took him to the Sri Lanka. There he met many Buddhist monks, including the renowned the revivist Anagarika Dharampal and the Acharya Sumangala. Now the next that we have to study is the Satya Sodak Samaj, that is the 1873. So I think how many people are one is Raja and the other is Gigi. Uh, so I think these are online. Na? Now next comes is the Satya Sodak Samaj, that is the of the 1873. Jyotiba Phule and the Savitri Phule. Now, while the movements discussed above were largely focused on the upper caste, there were some exceptional movements which mobilized the lower caste and the articulated their perspective. The most important among, so okay, there are only two persons who are live now. The most important among them was the Jyotiba Phule, who belonged to the Mali, that is the gardener community. Born in the 1827, he received the initial education in a mission school but had to discontinue it in the 1833. Jyotiba Phule waged a lifelong struggle against the upper caste tyranny. In his quest for the truth, Phule read the Vedas, the Manu Samhita, the Purans, and the thought of the Buddha, Mahavir, and the medieval Bhakti saints extensively. He also acquainted himself with the Western thought and the Christian and the Islamic religions. Phule judged the whole culture and the tradition through the spirit of the rationality and the equality. While the principle of the equality called for a total rejection of the caste system, authoritarian family structure, and subordination of the woman, the principle of the rationality demanded the removal of the superstition and the ritualism. Phule held the radical views on the social, religious, political, economic issues. He considered the caste system as an antithesis of the principles of the human equality. He sought to raise the morale of the non Brahmins and united them to revolt against the centuries old inequality and social degradation. Towards the end, Phule founded the Satya Sodak Samaj in the 1875. That means Society of the Seeking the Truth. His most important book is the Gulamgiri, that is the slavery. So this book you have to remember. Now Phule looked upon the education of the masses as a liberating and the revolutionary factors, since women and the deprived and the downtrodden were the worst sufferers of the society. Phule argued that the women's liberation was linked with the liberation of the other classes in society. Equality between the classes as also been the men and the women were stressed by the Phule. During the marriages, he asked the bridegroom to promise the right of the education to his bride. Phule also tried to translate his ideas in the actual struggles. He urged the British government to impart the compulsory primary education to the masses through teachers drawn from the cultivating classes. He started a school for the girls in the Pune in the 1851 and one for the depressed classes with the assistance of his wife Savitri. He also started schools for the untouchables and founded a home for the widow children. In his work, we find the beginning of the later day non-Brahmin movement of the Maharashtra. So this was about the Jyotiba Phule. The movement was against the untouchability or against the lower strata or the reforms in the lower strata class. And you have to remember his book, that is the Gulamgiri. Next comes is the Pandita Ramabai 1858 to 1922. Pandita Ramabai was foremost among the Indian leaders who worked for the emancipation of the women. Pandit Ramabai came from a learned family and was a great scholar of Sanskrit and addressed many learned groups in different parts of the country. She was given the title of the Pandita and the Saraswati So she was given the title of the Pandita and the Saraswati for her deep knowledge of the Sanskrit. After the death of her parents, she and her brother traveled to the different parts of the country. They went to the Calcutta in the 1878. 2 years later, her brother also died. A little later in the 1880s, she married a Bengali belonging to a family of the lower social status. Thus, even at that time, she was bold enough to marry a man of a different caste and different language. After the death of her husband also 2 years later, she returned to the Pune and started the Arya Mahila Samaj with the help of the leaders like the Ranade and the Bhandarkar. So such a unfortunate life was of her. So everyone who came in her life left shortly. So his mother, father died, then brother died, then later on his husband also died. Such a unfortunate thing. Now the 300 women were educated in the Samaj in the 1882. The Ramabai started the Shraddha Sadan shelters for the homeless, for the destitute widows with the help of the Ranade and the Bhandarkar. But soon she was accused of the converting the Hindu women to the Christianity, hence had to shift her activities to the Kedargaon near the Pune. She established a Mukti Sadan Freedom House there. Soon there were the 2000 children and the women in the house. Vocational training was given, make them the self-reliant. So she was a great personality. So she faced such things in her life. Then also she does not step back, but she moved further and established a society, a good society, or the institutions for the children and the women. Now next comes is the Sri Narayan Guru. The movement emerged in the Kerala and was born out of the conflict between the depressed classes of the upper caste. It was started by the Sri Narayan Guru, spearheading a social movement of the Ijavas of the Kerala, a community of the Toddy tappers. The Ijavas were the single largest group in the Kerala, constituting the 26% of the population. A great scholar in the Malayalam, Tamil and the Sanskrit, Sri Narayan Guru established the Sri Narayan Guru Dharma Paripalan Yogam in the 1902. The SNDP Yogam took up the several issues such as the right of the admission to the public schools, recruitment to the government services, access to the roads and the entry to the temples, and the political representation. The movement as a whole brought the transformative structural changes such as the upward social mobility, shift in the traditional distribution of the power, and the federation of the backward classes into a large conglomeration. As a response to the prohibition of the Ejavas into the temples, Sri Narayan Guru established new temples and empowered the community to modernize itself. Great personalities such as the poet Kumaran Asan, Dr. Palpu and Sodaran Ayyappam emerged from the movement and made a lasting impact in the democratization of the Kerala society. Even though the Guru himself was not directly involved in the movement, the Vaikom Satyagraha, organized to protest against the ban on the entry of the Ijavas on the temple streets of the Vaikom, and made a deep impact on the subsequent temple entry movement. So this was the one part of the chapter which we have completed. So the government should work on and should provide the various chapters on the recent people, so the recent socio-religious movements or the good peoples of the recent times, like the APJ Abdul Kalam and the other peoples who have contributed to the society. There should be a chapter in our syllabus also. Now there is a movie that is about to come on the Amazon Prime, that is the Shakuntala Devi. Do watch that. So she was also a great personality. As shown, she was a mathematician, a great mathematician, Sakuntala Devi. So it is releasing on the 31st on the Amazon itself, the movie. So it talks about the mathematics, and she used to answer any equation without solving on the pen and the paper. She can do any multiplication or the addition. So I watched the trailer, it was very good. So India is not lacking behind. India has such great people who were there from the ancient times, from the time of the Aryabhat and to the recent of the APJ Abdul Kalam. And now also we have the such personalities which are serving the country in the ISRO and the other institutes. Now, Islam reform movements, the revolt of the 1857 and its brutal suppression by the British had an adverse impact on the Muslims of the South India. Okay, okay, Raja. So, a movie in which Vidya Balan is playing the role of the Shakuntala Devi, it is releasing. Now, the movies would be released on the OTG platform only. So, and now internet has become a part of life of the people. Now, in the coming centuries, there would be no cinema halls, so all the things would come online, and it promotes the talent. Now, the revolt of the 1857 and its brutal suppression by the British had an adverse impact on the Muslims of the South in Asia. While they were viewed with the suspicion by the British for the 1857 insurgency, the Muslims themselves withdrew into a shell, and they did not use the opportunities opened up by the colonial modernity. Consequently, they lagged behind in the education and attendant employment opportunities. In this context, a few decades later, some reform movements emerged among the Muslims. Yes, it is a part. Now it attracts the huge talent. Now we are seeing that such good series are coming. Not only the Indian series, you watch the foreign series also. They are too good. Like I was watching the Money Heist, so it is in Spanish. So it is very good. The Money Heist, if you have watched that, so it has four parts. Now next comes is the in the Islamist movement is the Aligarh movement of the 1875. No, no, it is not Korean. It is Spanish. Spanish series. It is a Spanish series. Netflix. And there is a series on the Netflix also, The Crown. It talks about the history. It tells you the history through the perspective of the Queen Elizabeth. You came to know about the how India get the independence. Churchill never wanted to give the independence to the India, but later on, when Attlee became the PM, so then only we get the independence. So one of the factor was that the loss of the party there, and the Liberal Party, when it comes in the power in the 1942 election, then we got the independence, and the Attlee became the Clement Attlee became the prime minister. So Winston Churchill was reluctant to give the, because this was a huge colony for them for the raw materials, and they wanted to use India also after the becoming independence, like the USA that used the Pakistan after the independence also. Now, Aligarh movement was started by the Sayyid Ahmad Khan in the 1875. He wanted to reconcile the Western scientific education with the teachings of the Quran. The Aligarh movement aimed at the spreading the modern education among the Indian Muslims without weakening their allegiance to the Islam. Social reforms among the Muslims related to the parda, polygamy, and the divorce. Sayyid progressive social ideas were propagated through his magazine Tahdib ul Akhlaq, the improvement of the manners and the morals. Sayyid Ahmad Khan educationist program emphasized from the outset of the advantages of the use of the English as the medium of the instruction. In 1864, he founded a scientific society of the Aligarh for the introduction of the Western sciences through the translations into the Urdu or of the works on the physical sciences. The same year, he founded a modern school at the Gazipur. In 1868, he promoted the formation of the education committees in the several districts to initiate the modern education among the Muslims. During his visit to the Europe in the 1869 to the 70, he developed the plans of his life work, a major educational institutions for the Indian Muslims. In order to promote the English education among the Muslims, he founded in 1875 a modern school at the Aligarh, which soon developed into the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College of the 1877. This college was to become the Muslim university after his death. It became the nursery of the Muslim political and the intellectual leaders. In 1886, the Sayyid Ahmad Khan founded the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental Conference as a general forum for spreading the liberal ideas among the Indian Muslims. He rejected the blind adherence to the religious laws and asked for a reinterpretation of the Quran in the light of the reason to suit the new trends of the time. He attempted to liberalize the Indian Islam and made it amenable to the new ideas and new interpretations. In this mission, he had faced the brunt of the vehement attacks of the orthodox theologians. Now, the another movement in the Muslims was the Ahmadiyya movement of the 1889. The Ahmadiyya movement, founded by the Mirza Ghulam Ahmad in the 1889, established a different trend. While emphasizing the return to the original principles enunciated in the Quran, Ghulam Ahmad became the controversial when he claimed to be a Messiah, which was considered the heretical by the mainstream Islam. But he won many converts. His primary work was to defend the Islam against the polemics of the Arya Samaj and the Christian missionaries. In social morals, the Ahmadiyya movement were the conservative, adhering to the polygamy, the willing of the woman, and the classical rules of the divorce. So next comes is the Deoband School 1866. The Deoband movement was organized by the orthodox sections among the Muslim ulemas as a revivalist movement with the twin objective of the propagating the pure teachings of the Quran and the Hadith among the Muslims. The movement was established in the Deoband in the Saranpur district by the Muhammad Qasim Nanotawi and the Rasid Ahmad Gangovi to train the religious leaders for the Muslim community. In contrast to the Aligarh movement, which aimed at the welfare of the Muslims through the Western education and support of the British government. The aim of the Deoband movement was the religious regenerations of the Muslim community. The instructions imparted at the Deoband adhered to the classical Islam tradition. The seminary of the Deoband was founded in the 1867 by the theologians of the school of the Wali Allah. Muhammad Qasim Nanotawi took a prominent part in the counter polemics against the Christian missionaries and the Arya Samajists. The principal objective of the seminary at the Deoband was to re-establish contact between the theologians and the educated Muslims middle class, and to revive the study of the Muslim religious and the scholastic sciences. As a religious university, Deoband soon became an honored institution not only in the Muslim India but also in the world of the Islam at large. Next comes is the Nadwat al-Ulama, a school less conservative than the Deoband and more responsive to the demands of the modern age, was the Nadwat al-Ulama, founded in 1894 at the Lucknow by the historians Shibli Numani and the other scholars. The school aimed to offer an enlightened interpretation of the religion in order to fight the trends of the agnosticism and the atheism which had followed the advent of the modern Western education. The next comes is the Farangi Mahal. The third famous traditional school is the much older one at the Farangi Mahal in the Lucknow. Farangi Mahal accepted the Sufism as a valid experience and a valid field of the study. Another traditionalist movement was the Ahl-il-Hadith of the followers of the dicta of the Prophet. So this was about the Islamic movement. Now, the one thing I want to tell you is that if you are able to read these chapters along with me, it would be very good. So on the later part, I will say that you would not be able to cover all these videos or the chapters. It will become a burden on your behalf. So अगर आपने अभी इन चीज़ों को कवर कर लिया, मेरे साथ साथ ही पढ़ लिया, तो they would be covered. Later on they would not be covered. And the idea behind the taking every chapter was that so that you would complete these books along with me. If you sit and you decide to complete from 6th to 12th, you would never be able to complete them. That is the one thing I want to say. So complete these things along with me itself. And if you have time, make your own notes from these. Next comes is the Parsi reform movements. Zoroastrians persecuted. I know. So the sole aim of teaching you simultaneously or the every class was that you cover these chapters along with me. Now, if you left 5, 6, 10 classes, then you will think that they are left. Then you will never again show the videos. These videos are huge. They are of 2 hours of each video. So you are never able to complete this. So try to do. Oh, and the one more thing you can do these things is that you can. The one more thing that you can do these things is. So I forgot. I slipped from my mind what I was saying. Now that's Raja, my speed is not fast. You are not able to cope with me. The thing is that you are occupied with other things also at the same time. My speed is fine. I am taking 1 or the 2 chapter that you have to do. Now, if you do not do 1 or the 2 chapters, it's impossible to complete whole syllabus in a year or 2 years. I can definitely say, because there are 350 plus videos. If we do, if 350 plus chapters, if we do one chapter daily, then it will take 1 year. I was not at this speed because at the beginning I have to make the base. Na, I have to. The thing is that I am doing the only two chapters daily. That is not a big deal if you are preparing for the UPSC. Now the thing is that you are occupied with other things. That is the another thing, na. For a UPSC person, if you will see, they study for the 12 15 hours daily, and this is not much. Those people who attend the coaching classes, they are also daily conducted of 2.5 hours. And the sole aim is not to teach you these books, but the thing is that to complete the syllabus and to make you clear the prelims, mains, and to get you in the UPSC. That is my sole aim. NCERT is not only our syllabus, so we need to go first. Yes, Gigi, yes, yes. You are right. These are for your base building. These are not required for you writing good answers. After studying these, you are not able to write good answers. And the fact is that the answer writing not depends upon your knowledge. It depends upon how you grasp the things and how you have practiced the things. So practice is must. So these are for your basic understanding. If you have forgotten what you have studied in your school time, I am recalling those things only. I am not doing anything other. I am recalling those things in these classes. So my sole aim is that do come daily and do revise. If you miss any class, do complete it on the Saturday and the Sundays. And if possible, make your own notes. Now, Parsi reform movements, the Zoroastrian, the persecuted in their Persian homeland, migrated in the large number to the west coast of the India in the 10th century. Now, as a trading community, they flourished over the centuries, a close knit community. I will definitely say that, Raja, you would not be able to write the good answers. That I am surely can say that, because the UPSC, for the particularly I can say for the UPSC, that you require the study of the good books like the Bipin Chandra and the books like the, because their language is so na, when you will read, they have written in the so good manner. And the thing is that it is not about there are 20 questions. There are 20 questions in your mains, so you don't have the time to think for all the 20 questions. The thing is that you have to go prepared from your home itself. You have to practice at least 2000 main question before you sit in the mains, and these 2000 questions would be the 2000 topics you have prepared for the UPSC, and these 2000 questions you have prepared for 10 times, or the that will help you, that you have to write in your exam. So it demands your speed. The exam, what is it demanding? It is demanding your speed. It is demanding that does you have the basic concept or not. It is demanding that how accurate are you, and it is asking you to perform in the harsh conditions or the short time you have to write so much. Now when you will write 20 plus 20 40 questions, When you will write 40 questions in a day, when you will realize that your hand, Gigi, they are available at the website also. The my website, that iasvijay.in, there you can find the PDF. You can download from there itself. So history PDF I have shared there. You can download from there. So when you will write 40 question a day, and the next day you have to write again 40 questions. So that is a situation, so you have to prepare for that. It's not like the college exam, or it's not like your university exam or your the school exam. It's a different thing, whole different thing. Because the toppers or the other people who prepare for the UPSC, I can definitely say that those people do so much of the answer writing. And how they do the answer writing? They do the answer writing because they write the answers daily. They use the people who are prepared. There are the some people who are prepared for the 2020 prelims. Now they are practicing the daily, they are writing the answers. At least 5 to the 10 questions they are daily writing. So they are ahead from us. There are the people who are appearing in the 2021 also. They are doing the answer writing. So they will become so good at the answer writing. From seeing a question, they write the whole answer because they have learned so much things. It is another thing that if you don't agree with me, that is another thing. So let's start. We were doing the Parsi reform movements. Now, Zoroastrians persecuted at the beginning also. I told you that these books are for your base making. We would be doing the Lakshmikant, we would be doing the Bipin Chandra. I was reading, I completed 2 chapters. The Bipin Chandra has been written in so much detail, so good for your mains answer. So, the Bipin Chandra talks about the every ruler in the great detail. What was his personality? For example, when you will read the Bipin Chandra's first chapter, you come to know about the Aurangzeb. How was his personality? How was the personality of the other the rulers that come later on? How was the personality of the person that the Hyder Ali, Tipu's personality, Tipu's background, and overall analysis is given. So the book is for more for the mains, the Bipin Chandra. But I will say that they at that time, the 30-40 years back, they wrote such a good book. Okay, Raja, good. You are writing one answer. Try to write 2 to 3 answer. And at this stage, I will tell you that you do not require to write on your own. The thing that study the मॉडल आंसर पढ़ो और उसी को लिख दो अपनी लैंग्वेज में. Study the model answer and do write that in your own language. So I will say that this month and the next month, coming month, so we have the 45 days. Raja, you can write at least 5 question. Try to write, means that the learn 5 question daily. So it would be 45 into 5 or 50 into 5. It will be account for the 250 questions would be covered till your the 31st of the August. If you write daily 5 question, so you don't have to write 5 question, you have to learn 5 question. For example, if you have studied the chapter today, reform movement, do pick 5 question from the previous year questions, or do search on the web. You will get the 5 mock questions from the mains of the various coaching centers. Do learn those 5 questions. उन 5 questions को याद करो and do write in your language. Now, Zoroastrians persecuted in their Persian homeland migrated in the large number to the west coast of the India in the 10th century. As a trading communities, they flourished over the centuries. A close knit community, it too was not left untouched by the reform movements of the 19th century. And I will tell you one more thing, na. When our classes will get over, na, and our syllabus for the Tamil Nadu SCRT will be completed, then who are not taking the classes and who are not covering the classes, they will accuse me that, sir, you have gone so fast that we are not able to complete. So then the fault will be of the teacher only, not of the students. So I will request all of you who are watching these videos, do attend regularly, do cover. If you are not able to see live video, do cover it the same day or on the Saturday and the Sunday. Okay. I am saying to other people who are not attending the classes. Now, the Renumai Madhyasanam Sabha, the Religious Reform Association, it was founded in the 1851 by a group of the English educated Parsis for the regeneration of the social condition of the Parsis and the restoration of the Zoroastrian religion to its pristine purity. The movement had Naroji Furdonji, Dadabhai Naroji, K.R. Kama, S.S. Bengali as its leaders. The members of the reform was spread by the message of the reform was spread by the newspaper Rost Goftar, Truth Teller. Parsi religious rituals and the practices were reformed and the Parsi creed redefined. In the social sphere, attempts were made to uplift the status of the Parsi woman through the education, removal of the parda, raising the age of the marriage and the like. Gradually the Parsis emerged as the most westernized sections of the Indian society. They played a key role in the nationalist movement and in the industrialization of the India. Now next comes the Sikh reform movements. The Sikh community could not remain untouched by the rising tide of the rationalist and the progressive ideas of the 19th century. The Singh Sabha movement was founded in the 1873 with the twofold objective, that is to make the available modern Western education to the Sikhs, and second one is to counter the proselytizing the activities of these Christian missionaries as well as the Hindu revivalists. A network of the Khalsa schools was established throughout the Punjab. The Akali movement was an offshoot of the Singh Sabha movement. The Akali movement aimed at liberating the Sikh Gurudwara from the corrupt control of the Udasi Mahants or the priest. The government passed the Sikh Gurudwara Act 1922, amended in 1925, which gave the control to the Shiromani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee as the main body. Now, reform movements in the Tamil Nadu, we are not doing this part, so we are leaving this. Now, the next part we are going to do is the Christian missionaries. The official religious policy of the East India Company was one of the neutrality towards the native religions. Their reasons for the continuing this policy was the belief that the earlier Portuguese rule had come to an end because of their attempts to forcibly convert the people to Christianity. As a result of this concern, the company government prohibited the entry of the missionaries into the territories under their control. In 1793, two English missionaries, William Carey and the John Thomas, both Baptists, set out to the India with the intention of the starting a mission. In view of the ban of the missionary activities, they settled down in the Danish colony of the Serampore, north of the Calcutta. Carey, along with the two other missionaries, Joshua Marshman and the William Ward, established the Serampore mission in the 1799. The Serampore missionaries were the first evangelical Baptist missionaries in the India. They were followed later by the other missionary groups belonging to the different Protestant denominations. Before the arrival of the Serampore missionaries several centuries earlier, there were the Christian missionaries in the Portuguese territories of Goa and also on the Malabar coast and the Coromandel coast. The work of the earlier missionaries were limited both geographically and in terms of the number of the conversion to the Christianity. Thus, major attempts at the proselytization began during the 19th century. The missionaries organized schools for the socially and economically deprived and they pleaded for their economic improvement through employment in the state services. They also fought for the civil rights that included the access to the public roads and permission for the women on these groups to wear upper garments. The missionary gave shelter to the orphaned children and other destitute widows in their mission and provided education for them in their boarding schools, particularly after the famines which were quite common during the 19th century, about which we discussed in the previous lesson. The missionaries organized relief, providing shelter to the convert people to the Christianity. In Tirunelveli district, many villages took the Christianity during the famine, especially in the last quarter of the 19th century. The same phenomenon was witnessed in the Andhra, where the Mallas and the Madigas embraced the Christianity in a big way. The company government did little to provide the modern education for the native population. For a long time, the provision of the elementary school facilities to native population, especially in the interiors of the for the disprivileged and the poor people, was a responsibility willingly accepted by the Christian missionaries. It must be noted that the Christian missionaries took the initiative of establishing the hospitals and dispensaries. Now, the last topic, that is the significance of the reform movements. What is this significance? The orthodox sections of the society could not accept the scientific and the ideological onslaught of the socio-religious reforms. As a result of this, the reformers were subjugated to abuse persecution, issuing of the fatwas, and the even assassination attempts by the reactionaries. However, in spite of the opposition, these movements contributed toward the liberation of the individual from the conformity born out of fear. The translation of the religious texts into the vernacular languages emphasis on an individual right to interpret the scripture and simplification of the rituals made the worship a more personal experience. The movement emphasized the human intellect capacity to reason and think. By weeding out corrupt elements in the religion practices, the reformers enabled their followers to counter the official taunt that their religion and this society were decadent and the inferior. It gave the rising middle classes the much needed cultural roots to cling to. So, this was all we have completed. So, in this PDF, I am not having the questions. So, do attend the questions. The PDF I have opened in this, I am not having the question, so I would not be able to discuss the question. So I would be discussing the questions later on. So do revise, do complete what we have done till now, and most probably we would be completing the chapter next week. So next week हम जो है complete कर देंगे. Our history would be completed by next week. Then the next thing that we would be starting would be the economics. After history, we would be going to directly to the economics. That's all. Bye. Take care.